Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Mark Graham. I'm a project manager working for Unite Utilities. My colleague is Katie Rowlands. She's the project manager on the scheme we're going to talk about today, which is the Vyrnwy Aqueduct Modernisation Programme of work. I'll pass you over to Katie now. She'll introduce herself and then we'll get into the presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So, a quick introduction. My name is Katie Rowlands, as Mark said. I am a project manager within the water team of capital delivery within United Utilities. So, one of the, if not the main project that I've had the pleasure to be on and run with is the Vyrnwy Aqueduct Modernisation Programme. It's one of United Utilities' biggest clean water jobs that we currently have and will have for a couple of years. So that's me. So what is the Vyrnwy Aqueduct Modernisation Programme? So it's essentially clean drinking water supplied by our treatment works in Oswestry. It runs from raw water from Lake Vyrnwy into 4 raw aqueducts. It goes to Oswestry, which is our treatment site, and then it is travelled and transported through 3 42-inch diameter pipes that run all the way from Oswestry to Prescott. The project and the work that we're currently focused on now is mainly between Malpass and Prescott. So in a previous AMP, there was work undertaken between Oswestry and Malpass that was thin wall lining and also some cleaning on line 3. So this project in its entirety comes to 139 kilometres of pipeline to be modernised. That's a combination of cleaning and slip lining due to the nature of the different types of pipe that we've got. In total, it'll be 85 kilometres of PE 42-inch pipe that will be purchased. We have different SDR ratings for that, so we range from 2117 to 13.5. So depending on the pressure in the bar that we have at that point, we'll need a thicker pipe. It's approximately coming around 250 million for the value of the work. Obviously, we are just shy of 4 years in, so that is our overarching estimate for the whole project. And as I said, we're halfway through an 8-year programme, so it started in 2020 and our end date is the 31st of December 2028. So the actual history of the Vyrnwy Aqueduct, it was originally done by Liverpool Corporation Waterworks. The reservoir was created in the 1880s. A lot of the pipe and the cast iron. So we have 3 lines, 2 are cast iron, 1 is steel ductile, which was put in at a later date. So our first pipeline was actually started 1881, second 1902 and third 1926. So these are old pipes. They are what the Victorians put in as the first main water source to get water from Oswestry to Liverpool and around the surrounding areas. Back in the day, it cost 620,000, 100,000 to construct, so equivalent to 70 million today. That's probably gone up with current inflation rates. And the line of it, the order is actually 312. So, or 312. So when they put it in, they were planning on a 4th easement, but when it came to it, they didn't actually necessarily need it. So that's why we've got the 3. The whole route goes through many different parts of Cheshire, Widnes, and up into Liverpool, up into Prescott. So we have a combination of farmers' fields, public roads, housing estates, you name it, we've probably got it on this project. So the actual programme of it, as I said, it's an 8-year programme. So 1st of October 2020 is when the requirement statement came through to the project team. That's when we first did our kick-off sessions. We spent approximately 2 and a bit years in definition phase, so actually designing the notional solution, looking at the options. Thin wall lining, which was previously done in AMP5, was brought in. We assessed that in comparison to the standard PE slip lining pipe. Approximately beginning of 2023, we looked at awarding our first set of contracts. So this was for Siphon 1. which was a combination of cleaning and slip lining. So slip lining the two cast iron and cleaning the steel ductile. That was let out and awarded in 2023. So we are currently coming towards the back end of that now. So hopefully towards the end of the year, we'll be able to box that one off. At the same time, we were designing Siphon 2 cleaning. So because this project splits two of our amps, so amp 7 and amp 8, we've had to look and assess the project, how we do it, how we do the sections. So that's led to section 2 being broken out and actually divided between the two amps. So that there is why you've got S2 cleaning starting in amp 7, and then the slip lining was due to actually start in amp 8. Due to challenges from the business, because they want to obviously deliver the better product for customers and also for ourselves, we've then looked at bringing the accelerated work for both slip lining Siphon 2 and Siphon 3 in. That allows us time risk on the back of the programme and also allows us to start earlier, so if anything does crop up, we have more time on the back end of the programme to actually deliver or deal with those challenges. So part of the project, one of the main challenges that we face is the actual pipeline impact to the local area. This isn't a contained site. It's not you walk in a fence line and it is what it is there and then you don't have to deal with anyone. This is through public land, private land, owners, occupiers, farmers, housing estates, schools. So we are front and centre of the public. They see everything we do. And due to that, not only do we have the internal stakeholders of the business, United Utilities, the board and everything that we have internally, we also have our customers externally, but then also we have all the stakeholders that will have a direct impact on this, whether it be driving on roads past a school that has restricted times on it, to MP constituencies. So there is just an overview of the quantity of stakeholders that we have. 6 MP constituencies. Obviously, given that it's an 8-year programme, we will overlap on those MPs changing. 6 local planning authorities, which brings in its own challenges for resources, timeframes for the planning applications to actually get on some of these sites. So some of these are in farmers' fields that have that have a 10-foot gate. We need 15-foot or 20-foot wide to actually gain entry for the kind of kit that we need to take in. Some don't have any access points at all for where we need. So we're having to actually go through planning applications to make those temporary accesses off ABC roads, which also is causing potential impacts for timing. Other landowners, obviously we've got landowners, occupiers, we've got estates. We also have a section that runs through Delamere Forest. That causes its own challenge, as the only people that we as United Utilities under the Water Act can't serve on is the Crown. Well, the Crown obviously owns Delamere Forest because it's Forestry England. So a lot of the conversations with the people from Forestry England have happened very early and are also very important to make sure that we gain access through that land, and on that land we don't cause any issues. A lot of people in the northwest will be aware of Fiddler's Ferry and the current and the demolition for 4 of the cooling towers that happened last Christmas. Our aqueduct essentially runs alongside that and the whole power station. So we've had a lot of conversations with Peel Holdings, who own that land, have their own development ideas for that. So that's caused its own challenges in getting to site and assessing our asset. We also go under motorways. We go over the River Mersey, under the River Weaver, under the River Gowie. We also have canals that are one of the main routes for the Canals and Rivers Trust that we go under as well. We also have the asset going in front of Wiston Hospital, so that's another massive impact that we have to be conscious of when we're doing any work. And we also have schools and sports clubs. So breaking it down, Siphon 1 as we call it, which is mile past Cokebrook. So that is currently towards the back end of that programme. They've completed the cleaning and they are currently on with the slit lining, with the target to finish the slit lining by the end of this year. That section alone is 18.6 kilometres per line, so we are doing all 3 lines. 64 access pits, that is a combination of launch, intermediate, reception pits. This land and this section is predominantly farmers' fields. So in the middle of Cheshire, you are on B and C roads and unclassified roads. So not great for wagons turning, not great for pipe deliveries. So a lot of planning's gone in to deal with the logistical side of actually getting pipe to these excavations. We also have the challenge of a railway, a canal and the River Gowie in that bottom left image. That from an engineering point has been a challenge. As you can imagine, the pipe doesn't lay flat. We have 90-degree swan neck bends on either side, which is causing issue or challenges for us because we obviously cannot slit line a 900 OD pipe through those bends. So that's needed engineering input and development of ulterior solutions to get the pipe through essentially. The bottom right hand photo of that is stables. So our excavation and pipe runs behind a very predominant stable in Cheshire. They have racehorses, they breed horses there, and we are well aware of the potential impact that we have on them, on their asset, off their livelihood. So that's a massive stakeholder for us on Siphon 1 that we need to be cautious of. Then we go on to Siphon 2. So Siphon 2 is between Cokebrook and Norton, just south of, it finishes just south of the River Mersey. So this transition is essentially our transition section when it comes to stakeholders and how it looks. We have a combination of farmers' fields going into built-up estates. We have, out of 17.6 kilometres, we have 55 access pits. So similar plan, launch, intermediate reception that is used for jetting and slip lining. With this, we also have the pipe that goes directly underneath the roads. So if anyone has been in the Cheshire area and been to Delamere Forest, the main road that goes through Delamere Forest, our asset and all 3 lines are underneath that road. Currently, the diversions on closing that road for the excavations to actually get in and access the pipe and do the work, the diversions on either side are 45 minutes to an hour potentially. So there's an impact there that we have to assess and design a solution that not only delivers our output but also has the least amount of impact to local residents, customers, but also the general public that use and frequent the forest every single day of the year. We have on the images the bottom right corner, that is Delamere Pipe Bridge. That is actually the only point that you can see the asset. That in itself brings challenges on actually getting there working. That is a major railway route that we also need to be conscious of for any workings around it. Once we get past Delamere Forest, we're back into farmers' fields, and then we go under the River Weaver, which has its own challenges because the depth of that river and the pipe causes additional swan neck bends that we have to engineer a solution for to be able to slip line and clean under. Once we get through that, we go directly under the motorway and then we are in Norton Tower Runcorn area. So that's where we start to get built up areas, housing estates, sports fields. So that starts to get a lot busier when you think of logistics, not only the roads that we're using, but the general public use them. A lot of the roads are very busy. You have schools there, you have a hospice there, so you have that impact as well. And then Siphon 3, you go from farmers' fields to complete housing estates. This route is one of the most congested routes that we have, given the amount of built-up areas. We have Fiddler's Ferry with this one as well. That is obviously a challenge in itself on gaining access and protecting our asset while we do the works, but also when Fiddler's Ferry decide to take down the next set of cooling towers, we need to be conscious of that. It's the shortest length out of all, so it's 15 kilometres. In AMP5, they actually did work on line 3, so this work is predominantly focused on the slip lining of 1 and 2, which in theory should make it simpler to do because we only have to focus on the 2 cast iron. But unfortunately, it doesn't make it easier for us because that means that due to the nature of the estates, of the houses, of the roads, we are a lot more condensed. We have excavations in potentially just behind people's gardens. We have them in the middle of roads, which are main roads for the general public. As I mentioned previously, we have Wiston Hospital, which is a massive, which we potentially could cause a massive impact to, which we have to be extremely conscious of from a logistic point of view for the ambulances, general public, and people that need to go about their day-to-day tasks. Combined with this one, we also have another canal crossing. We have a railway crossing as well. As per the 2 previous siphons, we do have 90-degree bends in those as well, so we need to think of an engineering solution for those. Sometimes it may be to actually reduce the pipe size, so reduce the OD, and other ones it might be that we need to come up with a completely new solution, maybe potentially open cut it and lay a new pipe in that section. So from a work point of view for what it involves, the 4 images there, the first on the top left, that is an image of what the jetting. So for the 3 siphons, we've gone to 2 contractors. So siphon 1 and 3 has gone out to Avove. So they are the main contractor on those 2 siphons. Section siphon 2 has gone out to OCU Group. One benefit of having multiple contractors on site is they can all work at the same time without pulling from the same resource pool. It's helped us with bringing forward pieces of work with acceleration and also working in tandem. So as part of the employer's requirements that we put to the contractors, it was to slip line 1 and 2, which was more prescriptive, and to clean line 3. What that's meant is both contractors have come up with alternative solutions of cleaning, which from an innovation point of view is great for us to see. We have comparisons, we have new techniques that we can use on future projects. So for section 2, siphon 2 with OCU, they are using a proposed jetting. So they are using a jetting head that goes into the pipe, runs on 3 tracks on wheels, and will jet clean the pipe, going from a low point, run to a high point. Avove have chosen different form of cleaning, so they've chosen a technique called air pigging, which allows them to do longer lengths, and that was a great piece of innovation that they brought to our table for us to look at with this project. Air pigging has been done before on other size pipes, on other techniques, on clean water, wastewater. I know it's used in oil and gas and everything like that. It's been really successful for us, and it's definitely something that we're going to look at again for future work with this size of pipeline. And then the actual slip lining technique hasn't changed that much from traditional. You have an excavation, an intermediate, and a reception, probably each pit approximately 800 metres from each other. The benefit of this is we know it's a proven method, we know the success rate, and we know what we can slip line and what we can get through on a day-to-day basis. We are slip lining a 1066 pipe with 900 mil OD pipe, so we do have a clearance on that pipe, which obviously will help massively for the slip line and to be able to get it through. Part of the slip lining process as well, we are looking and scraping that pipe, so taking off any manganese buildup that is on the internals to also allow a smoother process for that slip lining. And then this last slide is essentially what our work looks like today. So as I said before, we have a massive impact on the local area and the local communities. On those images, bottom right is one of our pipe storage locations, so that directly comes off an A road in Cheshire. We have obviously pipe storage on there, we have valves, we have connection points, and also we have just the day-to-day running on those locations. One of the biggest challenges with these locations is obviously access and logistics, but we've also had to have a realistic review on all these locations and the sizes that we're actually looking to take on these locations. We need enough space to safely work and do our job, but we also need to make sure that we're not impacting the landowners and the occupiers to an extreme level. At the end of the day, we are working on their land, we are impacting their livelihood and their profit on a yearly basis. And for the best part of 5 years, we will be impacting them, and we need to be conscious of that. So we've taken and set up where it's necessary rather than setting up at every single location, which would not be realistic, and the impact is a potential impact to us for reputation, as we are so public in this job. Right, that covers my bit of presentation. Mark, any questions?
Actually, there's a question that's coming, but thanks very much for that, Kate. It's a fascinating project, it is. Hopefully everyone on the call has enjoyed what you presented. I just a little bit of information. I worked on this many years ago. We had a regime of cleaning it out, and it's a fascinating project to work on. And thank God it's getting updated to now, and we can provide safe water to Liverpool and surrounding areas. So it is a fascinating project. So we do have a couple of questions, Katie, if that's okay. It's from Delhi, and it actually comes on from your stakeholder management side of it. Question is, I can imagine the conflict of interest that may arise while balancing the requirements for each impact segment. How do you effectively manage all the varied stakeholders, given each will have their own agendas, goals, constraints, etc., which would not necessarily align to your project goals?
Yeah,
so it's about
absolutely.
Stakeholder management and how you manage that and what you have to do.
Yeah, so if you go off basic of excavations, siphon 1 is 64, siphon 2 is 55, and siphon 3 is 50. So when you add that up and assume every excavation's got a owner, an occupier, and then other stakeholders, it's been very busy from a stakeholder point of contact. One thing we do have our own team of third-party coordinators and stakeholder management. So a lot of the work that we've done in that definition phase for the 2.5 years before we actually got on site was talking to the people. So with standard projects, sometimes you're not speaking to people until a couple of months before you actually start getting on their land. With this project, we were in conversations with the main stakeholders, such as councils, local authorities, at least 1.5 years before we actually touched any soil. Because of the line of the aqueduct as well, we knew who we were going to impact. There isn't a chance that could change. So from a landowner point of view and an occupier point of view, we were talking to them at least 6 months before we actually got on site. That gave us enough time to be able to go and have direct conversations and face-to-face conversations with every single person that is impacted from a landowner and stakeholder point of view. If it was a different project, we might not have had that much time up at the front, but thankfully we've been able to take advantage of that and also have constant communication with our land agents and the respective parties throughout the whole process. We don't speak to them once and then never see them again. We speak to them frequently every couple of months just as a touch base to make sure that they're still happy with us, or if there are issues we can jump on them and solve them straight away so they don't create anything worse.
Okay, I think that's a really good answer, Katie. I understand a little bit about the project. Just to add to that, what I would say, what would you say was the key risk or challenge on the stakeholder of this project? If you had to pick one out, what would it be?
I think it would have to be the potential for a reputational impact. As I said before, this is a public project. You know, we can go through all the notices needed to get on a piece of land on our easement. We can do that, but if we don't have the buy-in of the local area, that is the biggest potential for impact. As everybody well knows, social media is massive in this current climate.
Yeah.
Takes seconds to take a photo, put something on Twitter or Facebook, and I think that's our biggest risk of something like that happening. Just because we haven't gone wider with communications, we haven't told the general public that are around the area of what we're doing, which is why we have a public website that has the project information on, and we launched that very, very early on in the actual project life.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, and that's a really good answer. And I'd say you're only as good as your last project, as my previous manager told me. Yeah, another question came in from Fraz. How many different subcontractors, third parties, are you using, and how have you made sure they're all working in unison? So it's about how you've worked with your subcontractors, the third parties, and I guess the design teams as well, getting them to work together in unison.
So from a contractual point of view, we have two contractors. So we have Avova and OCU, and they will have their own subcontractors, but under CDM, under NEC, and everything like that, and the project itself and the frameworks that they are signed up to with us, they are in charge of their subcontractors. So, for example, OCU for the jetting use Sapphire Utilities. That is their subcontractor for the jetting contract. They drive that relationship and they drive managing that subcontractor. We obviously have to be aware of them, we have to be aware of the issues, but a lot of that responsibility is put to our contractors as part of what they sign up with us. They are there to be competent contractors that can deliver these projects and manage these projects on our behalf. We are there just to make sure that our contractors are doing what they need to do.
And I think just simply from a CDM point of view as well, we make sure we have a responsibility to make sure they are all working together as well. We hold that responsibility. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
There is another
is.
question. There's another question that's come in from Carl, which is very close to my heart, Carl. This question. Given the headlines are always about overspending on infrastructure projects, how are we ensuring that this one remains within budget forecasts?
So one of the biggest pushes that we've had on this project is innovation. It's a massive project, it's a massive cost impact. We constantly challenge the norm that we have. So as every project, you have a traditional way of working, you have a traditional method of doing things. When we did our definition phase for 2.5 years, we went through an enormous amount of notional solution and engineering techniques. We looked at what we'd done before, what we are doing now, but that doesn't mean to say that that's always the best case. When we created our employers' works and sent them to the contractors for them to bid on, one of the points we said was, in order to make it a compliant bid, give us a proven solution, so your traditional slip line and your traditional jetting, but we allowed them to put an additional submission in for an innovative solution as long as they could prove that it would obviously not only save programme but saving cost as well. Cost is brilliant initially. Obviously, we all like to save as much as we can, but also there's a programme impact and a programme saving with that we can actually benefit from. Obviously, you bring in a programme by a couple of months, you're automatically saving on the prelims from that contractor and the overheads that you get from those as well. So it's a constant challenge that we have with our contractors, and it's a frequent conversation of just because it's the right way of doing it, it doesn't mean necessarily we have to do it here. Is there an alternative that we can do that saves us programme or saves us direct costs?
And I know myself, and on these type of projects, on infrastructure projects, we holding these monthly verification meetings where we're held to account, because ultimately we are spending customers' money, so we are held to account every month to make sure that we can remain within budget. There's another question from Stephen here. For this size diameter, what is the maximum length you can slip line?
So if you go traditional slit lining, the excavation pits are roughly between 800 and 900 metres. That'll be from your launch to your intermediate or your intermediate to your winch. We have successfully pushed, I think the maximum that we successfully pushed on traditional was about 900 to 950 metres. There are innovative, I can't say the word, innovation solutions that can actually push longer lengths. So there is the potential, something that we're looking at internally with one of our contractors, is that opportunity to push longer lengths, potentially past the 950 metres. That obviously means less impact, less pits, less upheaval to customers and local areas. That's something that we're currently looking into. If that can be pulled off and if it can be proven, then why would we not look to use that for the rest of the work?
Thank you. Good answer. Another question from Franz. I see that. How have you factored in sustainability into the project in the choices you've made?
It's a cracking question. So as part of the carbon saving and the sustainability saving of the project, when it came to cleaning, the main driver for the saving is the amount of water that we use. Obviously, with traditional cleaning methods, you use a lot of water. So from a sustainability and a carbon efficiency point of view, you have not only the water, you have the treatment of the water, you have the vehicle movements and the tanks that go with that. Aside from 1 and 3 on the air pigging, obviously that's next to no water needed. So we're able to reuse those pigs in succession. Obviously you use a clean one at the front, but you can use a secondary one after. So that's massively helped. They can be reused. So from a sustainability and a carbon point of view, there's a massive saving on those. Then also on siphon 2 with the jetting tanker, we're using the form of a recycling tanker. So it has a front tank and a back tank with filtration systems in between. So from a sustainability and a carbon saving from that, you have massive decreases on the water use. It's about 14,000 litre tanker that we can use. So if you think we can use that several times to clean the pipe, the knock-on savings from that is massive, but also the carbon savings as well. One of the positives with this project is we're trying to reduce our impact as much as physically possible. From a sustainability point of view, obviously you've got your ecological inputs that come with that. So it's trying to do the most effective to deliver our project with the least impact to the local area. And that is one of our biggest drivers as the project, to reduce that impact as much as physically possible. Obviously from a sustainability point of view, you've got BNG, biodiversity gain, that comes in. So with all the trees and the shrubs that we are taking out, it's a like-for-like replacement, and then you have the add-on with that. So we're increasing the amount of trees and hedges that we take out due to the BNG, which is a great point.
Yeah, I know it's a fine balance, isn't it, on these projects, but I know it's something that we look at all the time, don't we, right through the project. Okay, another question, there's a question from Kerry here. What size of organisation was supporting all of these complexities, roughly? Now, I'm not sure what you mean there, Kerry. I'm just thinking about the size of the organisations that delivered the projects, I would imagine. I guess we're talking about our partners and the subcontractors that we used.
So from internally, from a United Utilities point of view, the team is relatively small. We have an engineering team made up of 2 civil engineers, 1 ecology, 1 planner, 1 geotechnic. A lot of those aren't full-time, so we've been able to make the best of the resources to get the most effective output from it. From a contractor point of view, both contractors are part of our frameworks under one of our network maintenance service provider contracts that we have and frameworks that we have. Independently, they are both quite large contractors. They're not the same size as your MMBs and your C2B pluses and your advanced pluses, but they are still sizable. They work throughout the United Kingdom and in Ireland. They've all got depots and work in all the regions and have frameworks with the other water companies as well. So they are substantial, as does their subcontractors as well.
And they tended to work for us for a long time as well, these organisations. So we know them really well and we build up the relationships with them as well. So, and that brings
Yeah,
me
so
nicely on to the next question, actually. Sorry, Katie.
go
It's
on.
from Kate about resource management. Hello, Katie. Can you please tell us about the resource management and basically how you managed it?
So from day dot, one of the first things we did when we got the requirement statement was essentially ring fence our resources. So that was one of the biggest drivers that we had to box off very, very quickly. As you can imagine, in the current climate, back then it was COVID had just kicked off, so work obviously for us as a water company never stops. In actual fact, it got busier because everyone was at home and the weather was brilliant, so everyone decided to have all that kind of fun. That meant that our workload massively increased in general as a company. So from a resource point of view, it was very important early on to start that resource plan, not just for the immediate year, but also the 8-year plan. When we've got into it, obviously with all the business and everything that's ongoing across the last 3.5 years, it's been difficult to keep those resources. As you can imagine, the current climate, everyone's hiring, everyone needs work, the workload has just gone existential. So it was important to develop a team at the front end that has stayed the same, and we're very fortunate with that. The people that we've got are subject matter experts in what they do, so we've got the historical knowledge, and I think that's helped us massively with the resources. We've been able to bring on grads and train them up to actual engineers, and keep them within our team. But it has been a massive challenge to make sure that that team stays, and we keep delivering what we need to, given the current climate that we're in.
Well, thank you. I like this next question from Kerry, actually. How long will the new installations last? Is there a need to access these again for decades? Has there been any telemetry or intelligence systems installed now to provide future benefits?
Yeah, so as part of our standards within United Utilities, we have standard asset life that's given to every asset that we put in. They will need to be relooked at. This isn't a solution that will work for the next 250 years. There will need to be maintenance on these assets, on the pipelines. Our current standard for assets gives civils life, I think it's something like 70, 80 years. That is an estimation based on previous jobs and historical information. The assets that are currently in the ground are 120, 140 years old, and they're doing really well considering how old they are. But that doesn't mean that we put it in and we leave it. So at every air valve, we have technical covers. These are for access, so manned access. They're big enough to get in for operations to stick telemetry on those air valves, turbidity monitors and anything like that. So as part of the daily, weekly, monthly operations, there will be maintenance on those assets, but no doubt probably in a good 30, 40 years, there will probably be another cleaning project that will come and clean those pipes, just as a standard review to check the integrity of those.
And did we build any intelligence membranes in or telemetry for signals for that if there's any issues on the lines or?
Yeah, so we've got so at each of the main contact tanks and storage that we have on the asset, there are telemetry. Obviously, they will link into our ICC building that runs in case there's any issues. So we have that smart side of it as well that helps the business understand the asset.
Okay, that's good. Another question from, I hope I'm saying this name, Mike Bandelli. That's an interesting outlook in terms of the subcontractors being the responsibility of the main contractors. As you noted, a critical risk is reputational impact. Should the subcontractors make an error, it ultimately impacts your reputation. I have observed that in many BT OpenReach versus ISP projects, do you have any additional monitoring to protect yourselves at all? So I think it's a question around how we manage the subcontractors and the main
Yeah.
contractors, and they manage each other and then report into us, so our reputation is maintained.
Yeah, so it's a very fine line between managing the subcontractors. If we start managing the subcontractors, then we're actually taking the responsibility of what the contractors and what we pay them for and what we pay them to do. Also under CDM regs, they are responsible for it. That doesn't stop the reputation coming onto us, obviously. We are responsible for everything that happens on this job, whether it be contractors, subcontractors, an ecologist that's brought in to review an area. It all comes down to us and our names on the project. A lot of managing that is through our training. So as part of our inductions on site with all contractors and subcontractors, it's a water site, so we have water quality, we have inductions, we have site inductions and construction inductions, but as part of that, one of the large parts form on customer induction. So we have a massive part of that which is stakeholder management. So every single person that comes onto our job, whether it be contractor, subcontractor, rescue team if we're doing band entry and inspections, every single one of those will go through our not only the contractors on site induction but our own independent United Utilities induction. Those inductions are led either by myself as the project manager or the other project managers or the construction supervisors on site. And a lot of it comes down to the relationship that we create with our contractors. We need an open forum with them and with our subcontractors that they need to understand the reputational impact and the risks that will ultimately come on us. But we need to have faith and trust that the people doing the job are competent to do that job. And if we do give them an induction, they can follow those rules. Now, that's not to say that things don't happen, but if they do, we have the relationship with our contractor that we can have a very open conversation and discuss any matters that arise, and we can deal with them effectively.
And I think just to add to that, we have standards that we have to work to as well, which goes right throughout our supply chain from main contractors right through to subcontractors. So we have high standards to work to as well. Thanks for that.
Yeah. And we keep those high standards extremely high.
Yeah, and there's another question. This is from Ross. Let me read this one. You mentioned the project is forecasting to draw to completion in 2027. What is driving that? Is it rates for jetting, slip lining, and therefore simply how long it takes to complete the fabrication works? Is it a target United Utilities have set internally, or is it linked to the target that has been set by the local authority sponsor? So it's more, I think this is more about a question about why have we set this date to finish, and it's probably coming from a regulatory point of view, I would imagine, Katie.
Yeah, so with this project, the 31st of December 2028 is basically our stop dead date. That is what our regulatory enforcers have put on us. So we need to have that work completed by that date, full stop. Part of when we did the initial planning, when we looked at it, in a perfect world, you'd want to start at one section and then just move along. That, when we looked at the programme, went well past the 2028 date. So that led to us actually working in tandem and working on all three sections at the same time. Now, obviously, as part of a programme and risk, you never want to programme up to the end date because things can always go wrong and things will always happen. So we always had that time risk allowance in. We tended to put about 6 months when we initially looked at it. But from everyone that works on the project, we've taken a bit more of a glass half empty approach. and looked realistically to say, we need to assume that we need a year at the back end to deliver this if anything goes wrong. So that's been one of the main drivers to bring it forward as much as possible. Also, the fact that we've condensed the programme is a direct impact and a benefit to the local areas. So instead of an impact of 4 or 5 years, we've tried to bring it into 3. So there's our end goal driver, which is our drop dead date, our internal project review to look at it and go, we need to allow risk on the back end of the programme. If anything does slip, we have a safety net. But then also the stakeholders do drive that to reduce the impact as much as physically possible, but still delivering the project safely and to what we need.
Who are the main regulators on this? Who was the main regulator on this that set them dates?
So our main regulatory is the DWI, so the Drinking Water
Inspectorate, isn't it?
Inspectorate.
Yeah. So they would have set that date, wouldn't they? Yeah, they would have set that date. So we've got to have water in supply to obviously a certain level because it's sampled all the way through by that date. Yeah, so that's good answer. Another question here from Kai. It says, also, can you talk about some disputes that happened on this project? So this would be probably more around the stakeholder issue, I guess, where we've had some issues with the main stakeholders. And on projects, you always get some challenges, let's call them. So you would have had some.
Yeah. A lot of the disputes and the challenges have been predominantly around access, as you can imagine. We can have a discussion with landowners, we can plan everything in, we can say these are the dates, these are the times we're coming in. As part of our job, we go through section notices, so we serve 159s, which are 6 weeks expiries onto land. So legally after that 6 weeks we can get on. Now that's not the best approach because it might be a farm, it might be farmers' field, and they might have crop on there that they want to actually take out. So even though that notice has expired, they might not want us to get on straight away and basically decimate the crop for the land that we need. So a couple of they've not really been disputes because we've been able to solve them very early by having very early conversations. But if you caveat that as a dispute and a conversation, a lot of them have just been on when we're actually getting in. So even though it's our right and we can get on, we've got to be conscious that that's their livelihood. So sometimes the landowners have come back and said, well, instead of coming in on the 1st of April, I need to take crop off on the 15th. So then we've had to go and have a conversation about them to understand what is it from that crop they want. So do they need the crop? Do they need the money from the crop? Or do they just want to get their field empty? So by going down that route and having those conversations, we've been able to alleviate a lot of the potential disputes just by talking to them. Obviously, no one's ever 100% happy with construction going on in their land, full stop. But I'd like to think that because we've heavily invested at the front end with conversations, that the disputes we've had are actually very minor disputes, more about access gates. We want to come in at a certain point, and the farmer said, well, no, I don't want you to go in there because you're going to create a new hole in my hedge. I want you to come 20 foot down. So they're the kind of main challenges that we've had just with access in general.
Yeah, and it's a lot to do with early planning, isn't it? You know, we're planning very early.
Yeah.
You're having these meetings, these parish council meetings and local meetings in local areas to update people. Yeah. But also, I know on these schemes we would pay compensation as well. Obviously, if you're in a farmer's land, we would pay reasonable compensation as well. So hopefully that answers the question there, Kai.
Some of probably the biggest disputes that we've got, we can't really do anything directly from a compensation point of view about them. So if you think that, we've got an excavation in the middle of a road, Highways England, they're happy with us what we're doing, but the local residents aren't because Mrs. Smith that lives 5 doors down can't get her car in or can't walk to the shop because we need to take an excavation across that road. So a lot of the the disputes as such are more from the general public, obviously, because we're directly impacting their normal working day and their normal livelihood. So that's been a big challenge to get the general public to understand us, where we're coming from, but also for them to understand that we're not just coming up with one solution, we're looking at multiple solutions to reduce the impact to them as much as possible. Once they appreciate that we are doing everything we can to help them, a lot of those discussions and disputes we've been able to solve through community drop-in centres and stuff like that.
Great. Okay, I mean, that's the last of the questions that we've got on screen at the moment. I think it's a fascinating project, which Katie and the team are doing a wonderful job on there, and the feedback's been fabulous from the local community. I think we're happy to take some further questions. I know we've got from the APM. Have they got any other questions that have come in from elsewhere, or?
There's no further questions from our side, Mark.
Nothing further from yourself. Is there anything else we need to do then? Is there any? You mentioned that before there might be some Mentimeter or something. You said, well, that goes afterwards.
So the Ventimeter is live at the moment, and there are some key takeaways that have been coming in.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we've finished a little bit early. If that's okay, there's no more questions. Hopefully everyone's enjoyed it, and we've learned something new from the project. As Katie was saying, I think if you go on to, is it the UU website? I believe there's a page about the project.
Yeah, so we have, if you go onto Google and type in United Utilities Vyrnwy Aqueduct Modernisation Programme, that comes up with our UU Hub Vyrnwy project. So that is our public website that has all the work and overviews and the information that we give out to the general public from day dot on the work, what the impact is and everything like that. So, yeah.
And I know there's lots of useful information there. So hopefully everyone's found that really interesting and useful. And I think from our point of view, thanks for logging on today and taking an interest in what we do in our business. And thanks for Katie and the team for a great presentation. Thank you.